In just 12 minutes, uncover 10 brutal takeaways from Andrew Gold's explosive talk with war expert Professor David Betz on civil war risks, mass immigration, elite betrayal, and why it's not Muslim versus Christian. It's everyone versus state. Stay till the end. Takeaway 1, the Civil War won't be between those you expect. Professor David Betz begins by making a bold claim. The coming civil war in the West will not be a simple battle between Muslims and Christians or between immigrants and locals. Instead, the deeper conflict is between the general population and the state itself. People from all sides, ethnic, religious, and political, are starting to feel that their government no longer serves them. Betz explains that civil wars are never simple two-sided fights. Instead, they break into complex, chaotic battles involving multiple groups, shifting loyalties, and personal survival. As trust in leadership breaks down, people stop seeing their neighbors as fellow citizens and start seeing them as threats or strangers. Betz refers to this as a kind of peasant revolt happening alongside interethnic tension. Many people are angry not because they are racists or extremists, but because they feel ignored and betrayed by elites. He says once things turn violent, what starts as a culture war can quickly become an ethnic war, because people seek protection in simple categories like race or religion. For example, in the Yugoslav conflict, people who lived peacefully as neighbors began killing each other within months once the state broke down. Betz warns the same could happen in the UK. When asked who the two sides in this war will be, he answers, "It's going to be way more complicated than that." That should scare everyone. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2, immigration and elites are fueling collapse. Professor Betz describes two powerful forces pushing the West toward civil conflict. The first is mass immigration, which brings fast and dramatic changes to communities. The second is a growing anger from everyday people who feel the elite class is changing the rules of society without their permission. These two forces are colliding. One part of society feels like strangers in their own country. The other part feels constantly blamed for having traditional values. Betz says elites are often global in their mindset. They don't care much for national identity or local culture. In fact, some governments are labeling people as potential extremists just for saying they want to protect Western culture. He points to the UK's Prevent program, which now considers concern about Western decline as a possible warning sign of radicalization. This kind of labeling makes peaceful dialogue impossible. For example, if someone complains about uncontrolled immigration and is instantly called dangerous, they will stop speaking. Or worse, they will act out violently. Over time, this kind of silence turns into an explosion. The more disconnected people feel from their leaders, the closer we get to a civil breakdown. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3, civil war is more likely than you think. Professor Betz uses real research to show how close we are to serious conflict. He points to the work of political scientist Barbara Walter, who found that when a country has the right mix of instability, inequality, and cultural division, there is about a 4% chance per year of civil war. That might sound low, but over 5 years, it builds to almost 19%. And that's just for one country. Betz says that Western Europe is made up of many nations with the same problems: mass immigration, elite disconnection, and cultural fragmentation. Once civil unrest starts in one country, the others are likely to follow. He warns that if it begins in a place like Ireland, France, or Germany, it could quickly spread to Britain. The West is a connected system, and one breakdown can cause others. For example, if mass protests begin in Paris, social media will carry the images instantly to London, Berlin, and Rome, lighting a fire in each. Betz stresses that we are not talking about something far in the future. He believes this could begin within the next 5 years. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4, civil war will not look like a battlefield. Most people imagine civil war as two armies fighting in fields. But Professor Betz explains that modern civil conflict begins in smaller, more hidden ways. The key tactic is what he calls system disruption. This means attacking the basic services that keep a city or country running, things like electricity, water, public transport, and the internet. It's already happening. A group known as the Blade Runners has destroyed more than 1,500 cameras in London's ULEZ zone, which controls emissions. These people act in broad daylight and face almost no consequences. Betz says this proves how weak the state has become. Small groups can do serious damage, and regular citizens often support them. For example, if your business is hurt by Eulah's rules, you might quietly cheer when someone smashes a camera. He also mentions attacks on power stations in France and Heathrow, which could have been deliberate. These are early warning signs. The real damage begins when cities lose power, transport fails, and food stops moving. And it won't take thousands of people. Just a few hundred committed actors can shut down life in major cities. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5, the state has already lost control. Professor Betz believes the UK government has already shown it cannot handle even small uprisings. He uses the 2011 London riots as an example. Back then, just a few thousand rioters managed to paralyze the city for several nights. Now imagine that same level of violence happening every 2 weeks instead of once every 10 years, and involving 10 times as many people. Betz says the state does not have the resources or public trust to deal with that kind of situation. The police are already overstretched, and many citizens do not respect their authority anymore. If power goes out in winter, or if the gas stops working, people will panic fast. He explains that civil wars don't start with speeches or marches. They start with small events that snowball quickly, like a blackout, a failed food delivery, or a delayed emergency response. For example, if heating fails during a cold snap and people start dying, the government will lose control of public trust almost instantly. We're halfway through the video. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're enjoying it, hit the thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. If you'd like to support us, please tap the thanks button below. It helps us keep making great content. Drop a comment and don't forget to hit subscribe for more. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6. This may end with real bloodshed. Andrew Gold asked Professor Betz how bad things could get. His answer is grim. He says if the conflict is only as bad as Northern Ireland's worst year, the UK could lose around 23,000 lives. But if it reaches the level of Bosnia or Syria, the death toll could reach 500,000. And that's just deaths. The economic and social damage would be massive. Betz is careful not to exaggerate, but reminds us that civil wars usually destroy everything: homes, businesses, infrastructure, and even friendships. People become refugees in their own country. For example, in Syria, once cities broke down, millions fled, not to another country, but just to a different town where they thought they'd be safer. Betz says the same pattern will happen here. And once the spiral starts, it becomes hard to stop. Grievances pile up, revenge spreads, and things escalate from property damage to personal violence. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7. This time, there may be no safe place. Professor Betz warns that there is no new land to escape to this time. In the past, when people hated their country's direction, they could pack up and start over somewhere else. But today, the entire Western world is tied together. The same problems exist in Canada, the UK, the US, and Europe. Betz says there is no new world to run to. If civil war starts in one country, the crisis will likely spread to others. For example, if a major collapse happens in France, it will quickly impact Britain through migration, media, and supply chains. Even remote countries in South America are not truly safe anymore due to global financial and political connections. Betz says this time, everyone will be in the blast radius. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8. You need to think about relocation. Although there may be no completely safe country, Professor Betz does suggest some ways people can reduce their risk. His main advice is simple: get out of the big cities. He says cities are the most vulnerable places during civil breakdown because they depend heavily on fragile systems like transport, electricity, and food distribution. When those break, chaos follows quickly. Betz also notes that many middle-class families are already leaving cities. These are not just rich elites fleeing taxes. These are regular people who sense that things are going wrong. For example, if you live in central London and have the option to move to a smaller town with better community ties and local farming, now might be the time. Betz does not suggest panic, but he does suggest preparing while you still can. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9, there is no political fix anymore. When asked if the government could stop this before it gets worse, Professor Betz says we've already passed that point. He calls it the tipping point. It means normal politics, voting, debate, new laws, cannot fix what has been broken. Every decision now creates new enemies. If the government shuts the borders, some groups will explode in anger. If they leave them open, others will do the same. Betz says this isn't a question of choosing left or right anymore. It's about survival. The system has lost the trust of too many people. For example, if a politician today offered a sensible compromise, they would be attacked by both sides and gain no support. That means collapse is not just likely. It is already underway. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 10. The cultural fabric of the West is gone. In the final takeaway, Professor Betz reflects on what is really being lost. He says Britain, and the West more broadly, has forgotten who it is. National identity, cultural pride, and shared values have been eroded. People are told that being proud of their nation is shameful, that waving your flag is a threat. He quotes Orwell, who once said that England from 1840 to 1940 was a continuous civilization. But today there is a break. What made Britain special is disappearing. Betz warns that when a culture no longer knows what it stands for, it cannot stand at all. People sense this deeply. Even if they can't say it out loud, they feel it in their gut. For example, when a politician mocks someone for flying the English flag on their own house, it tells millions of people they no longer belong. Here is a brief introduction about Professor David Betz. Professor David Betz is a war studies expert at King's College London, specializing in military strategy, irregular warfare, and insurgency. He has spent over 25 years researching the psychological and cultural dimensions of modern conflict. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, hit the thanks button below. It really helps us keep going. If you enjoyed this summary, please leave a like and share it in your WhatsApp groups. To join discussion about this video, drop a comment below. And for more videos like this, hit the subscribe button below.